Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, November 23rd, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check out the SiriusXM app. You can download the app and then just search any team that is currently playing, the Pistons, the Red Wings, the Lions, etc., and you will get their home radio broadcast anytime, anywhere, straight from the app. So be sure to check out the SiriusXM app. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Now, I love being a fan of Detroit sports because I say happy Thanksgiving, and I do want to give a shout out to our Canadian fans because the Detroit Tigers have a plenty of fans north of the border, whose Thanksgiving was earlier in the year, obviously. So I do want to give their flowers and the respect to our fans north of the border. But today is Thanksgiving for most of us, and I just want to, we can call it what it is, cheesy, corny, etc. Whatever word you want to use is probably justifiable. But I just want to kind of lay out and have a laid back, more lighter, I guess, episode and just talk about things that went right this year. And we can just, make it Thanksgiving themed to just say like what we're thankful for. You know what I mean? Like I feel like this is, and we also do the last couple of years I have done, I would imagine I'll do it again. For those who have watched Seinfeld back in the day, on December 23rd, we do our Festivus airing of grievances as well. So for anybody who doesn't want to just hear like all the great things, or I don't want this to come across as just I think that everything is going swimmingly in the organization and I have nothing bad to say. But that's what we're going to talk about today, is just the things that really, I think a lot went right this year. I think plenty went wrong as well. But I do think that there are things that in 2023 going into the year, if you were a longtime listener, I appreciate you gratefully, but I greatly, not gratefully. Well, I am grateful. I appreciate you greatly. Goodness. But going into the season on opening day, I said that this was the year of the audition, right? And I think that we got a lot of answers out of that. Were all of them home runs? Were all of them guys that you can just guarantee are going to be penned into this lineup or rotation for the next 5-10 years? No. But I think we did get a much clearer picture. And that, to me, along with the record that blew past everybody's expectations in going into the year, those two things put together, I think is I don't know if I want to call it a successful season. We went under 500. I don't like losing, but that might be just too competitive for my own good. I do think that a lot went right this year. So let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about what we are thankful for, we'll say, about the Detroit Tigers organization. In 2023, a couple of the big things that I am thankful for this year have to do with the development of the core of this team, right? When you think of any great team currently, in the past, right? Even look in our own history, right? 84, there was a clear core, right? They were all drafted within 3 years of each other in the late 70s. There was a blatantly obvious core, right? And they all came up through the minors relatively, some of them literally at the same time, but all of those guys that were a part of the core were all going up through the system at the same time. That's part of what made 84 so special and awesome and unique and Detroit, right? And so I think that the semblance of a core, I'm not comparing, no one should compare like this core to that core. Okay. I'm not trying to do a 1-for-1 comparison. Certainly not. But I think that the fact that there even is a core to start talking about is something that I don't even think we had a year ago. We had the idea of one, but now we saw it in practice, and we saw that there is actually a way forward with Riley Green, albeit if he stays healthy, with Spencer Torkelson, albeit if he takes another step forward, with potentially Kerry Carpenter, again, if he takes another step forward. Like there is still room to grow. None of these guys, I hope, are at their peaks, but I think we talked about that a lot during the season, right? Like when it was Green, Torque, Carpenter back to back to back in the lineup, hitting 2, 3, 4. We were like, man, like this is cool. Like this is the first time we've had this, maybe since the last time we went 500, which was what, 2016. This is the first time we've had like a legitimate, like, oh, like we know that these guys are going to be here for a while. These are the guys that are gonna produce runs. If we're gonna score runs today, it's probably gonna be them, right? And again, I'm not trying to come across as sunshine and rainbows. I hope that people that listen every day are aware that like I'm aware of the flaws of this team. This was still a sub 500 baseball team, but I do greatly appreciate the and I am thankful for, we'll say, the semblance of a core that kind of came to fruition in the year 2023. I also think that some of the secondary pieces took steps forward, and some of the maybe not the heart of the core, but the outer ring of the core. Also, we had some guys fall into that category. I think Jake Rogers took massive, not only steps forward, because I mean, like he didn't play, but I think that Jake Rogers really solidified himself as a long-term member of this team. Now, does that mean once he's done with his 6 years of service rather, and he's a free agent, that the Tigers are going to make him like a huge priority? We'll see. That's still a ways down the road. We still got a lot of years for him before that happens. But for now, he is going to be the starting catcher on this team next year. And I would imagine that he is going to be the starting catcher on this team the year following as well. So having somebody like that kind of fall into place is also nice. And I already talked about Kerry Carpenter, but so whatever you want to put him, if you want to put him in kind of that tier or in the heart of the core with like Riley Green, if he stays healthy and stuff, like there's you can do whatever you want with that. You can put it wherever you want, but just the surgence and the development of Kerry Carpenter, I think, is something that I am unbelievably thankful for. Right, like how quickly we forget that going into the season in spring training, the debate was who's going to make the opening day roster, Akil Baddoo or Kerry Carpenter, and I sided with Akil Baddoo. Right. And I say it all the time. I've been wrong plenty. I'll be wrong again. All right. I don't fear being wrong, but that is something that will always be thankful to be wrong if it benefits the Detroit Tigers. And this is one where it certainly did. Kerry Carpenter took massive steps forward. He made a ton of adjustments, and he continues to do so. I think one of the players in 2023 that his performance I was the most thankful for was Tarik Skubal. We'll talk about that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. I don't know if we'll be back tomorrow. We might be Monday. I record these a day in advance, so I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon before the Red Wings game. And so for an episode to happen on Black Friday, I would need to record on Thanksgiving Day. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. So we will see. I'll try my best to, I try to do your team every day. I try to stick to that as best I can, even, through holidays and stuff sometimes. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Toss up. I just don't want you to be blindsided if there's not an episode on Friday. You know why. Okay. Let's talk about Tarik Skubal. This might be at the top of my list. And I got a lot of heat at the time for somewhat insinuating that a Tarik Skubal trade may be something that the Tigers down the road would entertain. And that was when he first came back from injury. This was his third season. He had yet to even really come close to a full major league season. He still hasn't. And I didn't expect him to be literally the best pitcher in baseball from when he came back to the end of the season. And depending on what stats you use, WAR being one of them, there is a legitimate argument that Tarik Skubal from the 4th of July on his first start back till the end of the season, till game 162, he was the best starting pitcher in the entire game of baseball. He had a 2.8 ERA, a 2.0 FIP, which means that he had a 2.8 ERA in 15 starts and was unlucky. Like his ERA should have been lower. He had a whip of 0.896. He had a sub 0.9 whip as a starter, albeit 80 innings. Didn't put, obviously only pitched half the year, didn't put up 160, 200 inning season. But that, along with not giving up very many homers at all, which kind of bit him in the rear earlier in his career, a walk per nine of 1.6, which is astronomically low, and a K per nine of 11 and a half. He was remarkable. He was stellar. And there was like a 2-start stretch, I want to say, in like maybe late August, early September, if I'm right. Don't quote me on that. But there was like a 2 or 3 start stretch where he wasn't like dominant. And outside of that, the other 12 starts, he pretty much was. He didn't even give up a run until like his 3rd outing back from injury or something crazy. So we can kick the trade news to the side, right? Again, I'll be wrong plenty more. And that is certainly not something that the Tigers are going to do unless you get like 2 of the better hitting prospects in the entire game of baseball. I don't believe anyone's untouchable in this sport. That's not how I would ever run a front office. But Tarik Skubal is somebody who you better pony up multiple of the better hitting prospects in the entire game of baseball if you even want me to start the discussion, because I think that he's going to be in the Cy Young conversation next year. Again, half a season, essentially. 15 starts, a full season for most is 30 to 32. 15 starts of arguably the best starting pitcher in baseball. I can't wait for him next year. And I think the resurgence and development of a true ace on this team is something that going into the year wasn't a guarantee, right? It's so easy to look back and be like, oh yeah, Skubal was always going to be that. No, he wasn't. That was very far from a guarantee. So I'm very, very thankful that Tarik Skubal had the second half that he did, put any doubts to rest, and now we can go into 2024 with the knowledge that we have potentially a true ace on our hands for the first time since Verlander left, legitimately. I think there's an argument for that, and that's awesome. I also think the development of the younger players was a big reason to be thankful in 2023. I think Reese Olson had a fantastic after the first month of the season. I think he struggled a little bit. I think his first couple of starts actually went well, and then he kind of dipped, and then he came back at the end of the season. But Reese Olson appearing in 21 games and throwing over 100 innings of sub-4 ERA baseball, 3.99, but sub-4 ERA ball as a 23-year-old rookie who had a 9 ERA in AAA is absolutely phenomenal. He has legitimate swing and miss stuff. That slider is going to play greatly. I'm very excited about what Reese Olson can do next year. We're going to focus on the positives today. Again, I still have my worries about how many innings he's going to be able to like actually pitch consistently on a year-to-year basis. But I think that the plan right now is on opening day for Reese Olson to be in this rotation. That's pretty darn exciting, considering I don't think that was really on anybody's radar going into 2023, right? You got to think back to how we were all thinking earlier in the year. Not too many people were like, oh yeah, Reese Olson's going to be in the starting rotation in 2024 in spring training of 2023. And here we are. Really, really proved himself. Really, really solid year. I think there's a couple of bullpen pieces as well that kind of jump out, right? Lang probably lost that footing as the season went along, but Jason Foley, I'm thankful for every day. I wake up and the first thing that pops into my brain when I wake up every day is, man, am I thankful Jason Foley's in my bullpen. I've made it very clear that I'm a big fan of his. I think that he brings such a valuable he is such a valuable asset because he brings such a valuable skill to a bullpen. And I think 29 other teams would do anything to have an automatic ground out in their bullpen whenever they wanted, that throws 100 and is only 27 years old and has lots of years of team control left, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the esurgence of him, I think the esurgence of obviously Tyler Holton, who was probably the biggest, I don't want to say underdog, but like out of nowhere story in the entire season, had a phenomenal year, obviously. And then I kind of got off track there, I guess. Back to like the younger players taking steps forward. I'm glad that Parker Meadows got an opportunity. Do I think it should have been more? Yes, but he's like one where he's going to be in the airing of the grievances episode and this one, right? Like he'll be in this one because I'm glad he got an opportunity. And I think most people are pretty confident that he can be the center fielder for this team next year, which is a win. But I do want to air grievances that I think he should have been up earlier in the year. But like, he's like one of the weird ones that's kind of in both. I guess there's a few that maybe could be in both of those. But yes, very, very, I mean, the fact that we have a guy who has 20 home run, 20 plus stolen base, elite defense potential roaming a Comerica Park center field at only 23 years old is absolutely awesome. I think this dude has the potential to be the best defensive center fielder we've had since Austin Jackson. And Austin Jackson, very underrated defender. Like nobody talks about his defense, is legitimately one of the best defensive center fielders in the history of the Detroit Tigers organization. And like any analytic and eye test, I think backs that up. So I'm very, very pumped to see what Parker Meadows can do going forward. And I'm glad he got a taste of the majors. I'm glad we got to see him in action. I'm glad that he took his lumps, honestly. I'm thankful that Parker Meadows struggled. Every young player ever struggles at some point. Nobody just comes up and is on fire forever, right? Everybody's going to take their lumps, even if it's just a couple of weeks, maybe a week. Everybody's different. When Mike Trout first got called up, his September call up, he didn't do well. Aaron Judge was abysmal his first call up, right? Everybody's going to go through it. And the fact that Parker Meadows has gone through it, I think gives me a really optimistic outlook about the adjustments that he's constantly going to be making in 2024. It's also why I wanted Colt Keith up this year, but we'll save that for December 23rd. Yeah, so I think that's for like individual players. I mean, I'm thankful for the Miguel Cabrera retirement tour. That was an awesome part of the season. Very thankful for what Miggy gave this organization throughout his career. But I really do like just going back and circling back to my initial point. I think I'm thankful that the year of the audition was the year of the audition. Like that was what this year was. We saw a lot of different players play a lot of different positions, get a lot of different opportunities, and I still think it should have been even more. Right, that's one of my gripes. Is I think it should have been even more. But I am thankful that we did get a clearer picture about who's going to be on this team, even if you're not like, oh, I'm not ready to say that like Torque and Green and Carpenter are guaranteed the core of the future. More power to you. Okay. These guys need to get better if they want to be. I'm not trying to say anybody's a finished product or that we're going to be able to build around, three guys who had like around an 800 OPS. Like that's obviously not true. But I think for at least the immediate future, it's a little bit of a clearer picture. And, least we forget the 5-6 years before 2023, 7 years before, where you had no idea who was going to be on the team in 3 months from then, nonetheless, a year from then, because it was just complete tank and lose as much as possible. So I think there's something to be said for that. Let's keep the ball rolling. We'll get a little bit more bigger picture about what we're thankful for. Take a trip down memory lane, etc. All right, we will do that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every day. Like I said, maybe back tomorrow, 50-50. We'll see what's up. We'll see how Thanksgiving goes with the family. So I do want to say that I'm very thankful that this team, in the previous regime, there was not a lot you could look at in the front office and be, I don't know, that you could trust. And obviously that starts at the top, but there's a lot of like secondary pieces in the front office that you couldn't really trust either. Or they just that like straight up weren't highly regarded. And I think even if you are like a big Scott Harris hater, which I know there's plenty of those out there, okay? I'm not trying to tell you we're not talking about Scott Harris right now. There are parts of the front office, though, that I think pretty objectively you can be appreciative of. The entire development department has taken such massive strides forward over the last couple of years. And that's really just since like 2021, since Hinch came on board, that's been a thing. And I'm very, very appreciative that we are now in a position. Some people feel some type of way about the offensive development. I still think there's room to grow in that area for sure, exponentially, to be honest. Still think that that's kind of a weak link. But on the pitching side of things, it cannot be understated how good I feel about the pitching development side of this organization, from rookie ball all the way through every level of the minors, all the way up to the major league level. And I think so much of that has to do with Hinch. So much of that has to do with Chris Fetter. So much of that has to do with Nieves and Lund. So much of that has to do with, a plethora of guys on the development side of things in the front office. And I think that that's something that should not be taken lightly at all. At all. Right? It's something we didn't have for so long. Player development in general just like didn't exist under Dombrowski, like literally, because he would just trade everybody. And like Dombrowski won. I'm a Dombrowski defender, but like as far as what we are trying to accomplish here and what we are trying to develop and the players we are trying to develop, I'm so thankful that at least part of the development staff is like actually highly regarded outside of our own fan base. Like other fan bases look at the Tigers organization and are like, wow, pitching development, they do really well at that. Like that's the first time in my lifetime, literally, that's ever been a thing. And so I'm very appreciative and thankful for that for sure. I already talked about the coaches. I think the Tigers really, I don't want to say lucked into, but just kind of woke up one day and had one of the better coaching staffs in the game of baseball. Do I think they're perfect? Absolutely not. Do I complain about things they do sometimes? 100%. We butt heads. We disagree on plenty. But I really do think that Hinch and Fetter and Lund and Nieves, etc. Even like George Lombard, like one of the best bench coaches in the entire game of baseball, could probably be a manager anytime he wanted. Like this is such a good, solid coaching staff. And again, I know there's still a lot of room to grow on especially the offensive side of the ball. But you need to give these guys some talent to work with on the offensive side of the ball as well. And I think we're already starting to see some of those steps forward. We just need to see more. So I'm thankful for this coaching staff for sure. I think that we've come a long way. Like I would have argued in 2019 and 2020 that we had the worst coaching staff in the entire game of baseball. I genuinely felt that way every day. And like everybody. And that's like, I don't know these guys personally. It's no disrespect whatsoever. And like, I think Gardy was kind of a placeholder from the beginning just to like get us through the bad years. I don't think anybody, I don't think the greatest manager who's ever walked face of on the planet could have not lost over 110 games in 2019. Right. But I think the revamped coaching staff that happened in 2021 was so good for this organization. And I'm very thankful for that as well. Take a little bit of a we're done talking about kind of the present. Just in general, I just love being a fan of this team. You know, I really do, and it's been my entire life, right? And I'm so thankful for the Detroit Tigers because they are my biggest passion on the planet and have been since I could walk. And so I'm as much frustration as they've caused all of us over the majority of the last decade now. I'm I'm still so thankful that, every single day from late March until October, they give me something to look forward to every single day. And that's something I certainly always try to keep in perspective as well. I don't do a very good job sometimes, but try to keep it in perspective even on the days that I'm really frustrated. I love this game, love this sport more than anything, and we'll always love the Detroit Tigers. And so I think just so many great memories too, right? And this is like I'm not trying to be like weirdly deep right now either. like we're happy, we're happy go lucky. Like it's just a fun Thanksgiving show. But like so many memories from my childhood, and I am thankful that they lost 119 games in 2003. And I know that sounds wild, but there is a legitimate argument that I am not as big of a baseball fan as I am if the Tigers aren't awful at that point in history. Who knows, right? No one has a crystal ball. I have no idea. Maybe I am anyway. But I was very young. 2003, I would have been 5 or 6 years old. And up to that point in my life, all the way up until 2005, right, when I was 7 or 8, um, all the way up until then, the Tigers had been nothing but awful. And that meant that we could afford to go to games a lot more often and could even do last second, right? I don't remember my first Tiger game. I have no recollection of like, oh, it's I don't have like an earliest Comerica Park memory. I've just like always been there my entire life. I've always spent my summers there. And so I'm weirdly thankful that they were so awful at the beginning of my life because it meant that I was able to go with my parents a lot more often than I would have if they were like a juggernaut. And then they started winning. And this team that I had spent all of my summers watching and going down to Comerica Park for up to that point in my life started being good right at like the developmental years, right? Right at like 8 or 9. Like it really was kind of just like the perfect storm, like for me personally. And 2006, grateful for that. 2012 fell short, but grateful for that. Just that entire 2011 to 2014 team, just really fantastic baseball. Just something to look forward to. Like you remember that feeling? Like it wasn't. It was so. It's so different. It's so different when it's not even a second thought that your team will be competitive all year, right? It's one thing for it to be a surprise and have like a 2006 where it's just completely out of nowhere and no one saw it coming and it's a Cinderella run. And that's obviously a fantastic feeling, an awesome feeling. And then obviously you have pretty much most of the last 8 years of Tigers baseball, which is just consistent. Like, okay, we're expecting not a whole lot this year. The show goes on. There's something so unique and special. And maybe it's because the Tigers fans have dealt with so much of the latter of just like, oh my gosh, I'm not expecting literally anything this year. Like, I just hope anything good happens. Maybe it's because we've had so much of that, but there's something so awesome about in March. You're like, yeah, we'll be playing competitive ball in September and October, probably. And all throughout the year, you're watching wins, which is great, but there's the expectation of greatness, the expectation of wins, and then the team backing that up is just so unbelievably unique and something that I probably took significantly for granted as a kid for those years. It's something I certainly won't take for granted again after these last 8 years, let me tell you. But that's just that is a really big thing, that's a really unique and cool mindset to have. And I really long for the days where we can just go into a season and just, yeah, we'll win. I'm not really stressed about the win. I'm stressed about how much we'll win, stressed about whether we'll get to the top. Everybody stresses about that. There's no guaranteed World Series in baseball. But I know that we'll be playing for it. I miss that feeling. I miss it greatly. Okay. Lastly, I'm thankful for y'all. I know that's like the corniest, probably possible way I could end this, but you had to have seen it coming. Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to make this whole show about me. Certainly, trying to, I don't like doing that. Trying to talk about the Tigers, bring something to everybody. But this is my biggest passion, and just talking about the Detroit Tigers with other people that have passion for the thing that I love, and being able to share that passion with other people is a dream and an opportunity of a lifetime that I have never and will never take for granted. And I appreciate you all for tuning in so that I can continue to do it. Yeah, my path here has not been a straight one. It's been windy and all over the place. And yeah, I just, if I was able to tell younger me, if I was able to tell me growing up, hey man, one day you'll be able to just like talk about them. You'll be able to just talk about them for a living. Yeah, that would have been. I probably would have cried a lot as I have over the last 2.5 years that I've been hosting this show. So I appreciate you all greatly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every day as well. And we will maybe be back tomorrow. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.